The royal guard's plasma rifle hummed to life as the child stumbled through the ceremonial doors, tracking mud across marble that had witnessed 3,000 years of judgments. Captain Jara's hand moved to her sidearm, fingers tightening around the grip, as every eye in the High Court of Thessa turned toward the intruder. The boy couldn't have been more than 8 standard years old, human, wearing clothes that looked salvaged from a recycling station. His chest heaved with panicked breaths. "Seal the chamber," Jara commanded, her voice carrying the weight of 2 decades protecting these halls. The massive doors groaned shut behind the child, their electromagnetic locks engaging with a definitive clang that made him flinch. Protocol demanded immediate removal of unauthorized personnel. Protocol demanded she drag this trembling human back through those doors and into the custody of city enforcement. But something in his eyes stopped her cold, a terror that went deeper than fear of punishment. Queen Thessera rose from the eternal throne, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the light from 100 ceremonial torches. The assembled nobles fell silent, their own chitinous bodies going rigid in anticipation of royal judgment. She was ancient by any measure, her carapace bearing the scars of wars fought before humanity had even discovered fire. When she spoke, her voice resonated through the chamber like the chime of a funeral bell. "You dare enter these sacred halls?" The question hung in the air, sharp as a blade. "You dare interrupt proceedings of the High Court?" The child opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Please," the word came out broken, barely audible. "Please, they're going to kill them." Jara's tactical implant fed her a constant stream of data. Elevated heart rate, extreme stress markers, no weapons detected, no biological threats. But her instincts, honed through countless security assessments, screamed that something was catastrophically wrong. The boy wasn't running from something. He was running toward help, toward the only authority he believed could stop whatever horror he'd witnessed. "Captain." The Queen's compound eyes fixed on Jara with an intensity that had made generals retreat in fear. "Remove this insolent creature from my sight." "Your Majesty." Jara's hand remained on her weapon, but she didn't move. Permission to question the intruder first. Questioning the Queen's direct order was grounds for immediate dismissal, possibly execution depending on her mood. The nobles shifted uneasily, their antennae twitching with anticipation of violence. But Thessera merely tilted her head, a gesture that, among her species, indicated curiosity. "You believe there is intelligence worth extracting from this child?" "I believe he didn't breach our security to waste our time, Your Majesty." The Queen settled back onto her throne, the movement deliberate and controlled. "You have 2 minutes, Captain. Choose your questions carefully." Jara holstered her weapon and approached the boy, dropping to one knee to meet his eyes. Up close, she could see the dirt under his fingernails, the tear tracks cutting through dust on his face, the way his small hands trembled. "What's your name?" "Tommy Chen." I'm so sorry, but nobody else would listen." "Tommy, who's gonna kill who?" "The humans in Sector 7. The foreman said they found something in the dig site, something they weren't supposed to find, and now the company's sending soldiers to make sure nobody talks about it." The words tumbled out in a rush. "My dad's down there." "My dad and 300 other people." Jara's blood went cold. Sector 7 housed the primary excavation operation for the city's expansion into the ancient ruins beneath Thessa's foundation. If someone had discovered something significant, something that powerful interests wanted buried, then Tommy's panic made horrifying sense. But this was beyond her jurisdiction, beyond the court's immediate concern. Or was it? She stood and faced the Queen. "Your Majesty, if this child speaks truth, we may have a massacre unfolding in the lower city." The lower city. Thessara's mandibles clicked together, a sound of dismissal. Where humans dig in the bones of our ancestors without permission, desecrating sacred ground for their endless construction projects. Why should this court intervene in human affairs? "Because they dig under contract from your government, Your Majesty. Because 300 lives hang in the balance. Because if we do nothing, their blood stains this throne." The throne room erupted in outrage, nobles chittering their disgust at a mere guard speaking so boldly to their monarch. But Thessara raised one crystalline claw, and silence returned like a guillotine blade falling. She studied Jara with those multifaceted eyes, ancient and calculating. "You risk everything for creatures not of your species, Captain. For humans who invaded our world as refugees and now dig through our history like scavengers." "I risk everything for what's right, Your Majesty. That's why you appointed me to this position." Tommy stepped forward, his small voice somehow carrying through the vast chamber. Please. I don't understand your politics or your history. I just know my dad is good. He works hard. He doesn't deserve to die because he found something someone once hidden. Queen Thesara descended from her throne, each step measured and precise. She moved past Jara, past the assembled nobles, until she stood directly before the child. Tommy's head barely reached the queen's thorax. He should have been terrified. Instead, he looked up at her with desperate hope. What did your father find, young human? He called it a vault, said it had writing he couldn't read, technology that looked impossible. He was excited, said it could change everything about how we understood the city's history. Tommy's voice dropped to a whisper. Then the company sent new security. Then they started moving everyone into one section. Then they locked the doors. The queen stood motionless for a long moment, her ancient mind processing information through layers of historical context Jara could only guess at. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed, carrying a weight that made even the nobles step back. Captain Jara, assemble your emergency response team. Full tactical authorization. You have clearance to use any force necessary to access Sector 7 and secure all personnel. Your Majesty? Lord Kethris, the High Chancellor, pushed forward from the assembly. Surely you don't intend to mobilize royal forces for a labor dispute? Thesara turned on him with such speed that he stumbled backward. What my ancestors sealed in those vaults was meant to stay sealed. If humans have breached the deep archives, then we face a crisis that transcends species boundaries. Captain, you leave immediately. Take the child, he knows the site layout. Her tactical network activating her team across the city. Tommy, stay close to me. Don't touch anything, don't stop for anything. Understand? He nodded, falling into step behind her as she strode toward the chamber's secondary exit. Behind them, the Queen's voice rang out with commands that sent the entire court into motion. Whatever Tommy's father had found, it was significant enough to overcome centuries of xenophobic protocol in a single decision. The corridors of the palace blurred past as Jara's team materialized from various positions, falling into formation around her. Lieutenant Vok, her second, matched her pace with weapons already primed. Boss, what's the situation? Possible massacre in progress, Sector 7 excavation site, 300 civilians trapped. Unknown hostile force, and apparently we're protecting something the Queen considers critically important to planetary security. Just another Tuesday, then? Jara allowed herself a grim smile as they reached the armory. Her team moved with practiced efficiency, loading ammunition that could punch through military-grade armor, checking tactical displays, synchronizing their combat network. Tommy watched with wide eyes as the guards transformed from ceremonial protectors into a lethal military unit. Have you ever shot anyone? He asked quietly. Only when I absolutely had to, Jara replied, checking her rifle's charge, and I've never enjoyed it. But if someone's threatening your father and those workers, Tommy, I won't hesitate. The transport bay opened before them, revealing a sleek assault carrier already warming its engines. Jara's team loaded up with mechanical precision while she pulled up schematics of Sector 7 on her wrist display. The dig site sprawled across 3 square kilometers of ancient ruins, all of it now buried under the lower city's industrial sector. Main access through 2 elevators and 1 emergency tunnel, all of which Tommy claimed were sealed. There's another way in, Tommy said, leaning over her display. The old maintenance shaft here. Dad showed me once. It's narrow, but we could fit. Could it support a full team? Maybe 4 or 5 people, not more. Jara made the calculation instantly. Vok, take the main team and prepare to breach the primary access point. Make it loud, draw all attention to yourselves. I'm taking a fire team through the maintenance shaft. We locate the civilians first, extract them second, deal with whoever's trying to silence them third. That's a suicide run if they've got the shaft covered. Then don't get me killed, Lieutenant. That's an order. The carrier lifted off with a roar that rattled Tommy's teeth, acceleration pressing them into their seats as the pilot pushed maximum velocity through the city's aerial corridors. Below them, Thessa sprawled in layers of gleaming towers and ancient stone. Jara watched Tommy's face as they flew, saw him scanning the windows for any glimpse of Sector 7. The boy had courage. Most adults would have frozen in front of the Queen, but he'd stood his ground because the stakes demanded it. She'd seen decorated soldiers with less spine. Tommy, when we get there, I need you to stay in the carrier. No arguments. But I can help. I know the layout better than your maps. You can help by staying alive and giving me someone to deliver to your father when we get him out. The carrier banked hard, dropping toward the industrial sector's landing zones. Through the viewport, Jara could see the excavation site's security perimeter, the guards outside looking relaxed, unaware of what might be happening in the depths beneath their feet. Or perhaps entirely aware and complicit. "Captain, we've got a problem." The pilot's voice carried an edge Jara didn't like. Multiple unmarked vehicles approaching the site from the north. Military configuration. They're not using standard identification protocols. Jara's tactical display lit up with threat markers. 6 armored transports, each capable of carrying a full infantry squad. Someone was moving a small army into position, and they weren't being subtle about it anymore. Time had just collapsed from minutes to seconds. "All teams, this is command. We are weapons hot." Rules of engagement: protect civilian lives at all costs. Anyone pointing a weapon at unarmed workers is a hostile target. Clear? Her team's acknowledgments came back crisp and professional. The carrier touched down hard, its boarding ramp dropping before they'd fully settled. Jara's first out, Tommy right behind her despite her orders, and she didn't have time to argue. Vox's team split off toward the main entrance while she led her fire team toward a nondescript maintenance building Tommy indicated. The shaft entrance was exactly where he'd said it would be, concealed behind a false electrical panel, narrow, dark, and descending at a steep angle that would make retreat nearly impossible. Perfect. Jara activated her helmet's low-light enhancement and started down, her rifle leading the way. The descent felt endless, metal rungs slick under her gloves, the shaft so tight her shoulders brushed the walls. Behind her, 3 of her best operators followed in silence, their breathing controlled, their weapons ready. Above, she could hear the distant crack of weapons fire as Vac's team engaged whoever was guarding the main entrance. "We're in." Vac's voice crackled through her comm. Heavy resistance. "They're definitely trying to keep us out." "Boss, whatever's down there, they're willing to kill to protect it." "Keep them busy. We're almost through." The shaft opened into a junction chamber lit by emergency lighting, its walls covered in the same ancient stone that formed Thessa's oldest foundations. But something was different here. The stone bore markings, symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when Jara looked at them directly, writing that predated any known civilization on this world. "Contact front!" One of her operators opened fire, plasma bolts illuminating the chamber in strobing flashes. Armed figures in unmarked combat armor scattered for cover, returning fire with military precision. These weren't security guards, these were professional soldiers. Jara's team moved like a single organism, covering and advancing, their training evident in every movement. She dropped one hostile with a controlled burst to center mass, saw another go down to her operator's flanking shot. The firefight lasted 15 seconds, brutal and decisive, ending with 3 enemy combatants dead and 1 wounded. She knelt beside the wounded soldier, pulling his helmet off to reveal a scarred face she didn't recognize. "Who sent you? Go to hell. Who's paying you to murder civilians?" Blood bubbled at his lips. "You don't understand. What they found, it can't get out. It would destroy everything." "What did they find?" His eyes were already glazing. "The truth about this world. About your precious queen." He coughed, a wet sound that spoke of punctured lungs. "About humans." Then he was gone, whatever secrets he carried dying with him. Jara stood, her mind racing through implications. The Queen had known something, had mobilized immediately when Tommy mentioned the vault. This wasn't about protecting dig workers, this was about something far larger. "Captain, we've got the civilians," Vok reported. 300 plus, locked in the main excavation chamber. "But you need to see what they found. Boss, this changes everything." Jara moved deeper into the complex, following the sound of frightened voices in her team's positioning markers. The excavation chamber opened before her, vast and impossible, its ceiling lost in shadow. And there, in the center of it all, stood the vault Tommy's father had discovered. It wasn't Thason. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything Jara had ever seen in all her years serving the crown. The structure rose 30 meters high, composed of some material that seemed to exist between states of matter, solid and liquid, and something else entirely. Symbols covered every surface, glowing with internal light, and at its center, a sealed door that radiated power she could feel in her bones. Tommy's father stood before it, a thin man with his son's eyes covered in dust and surrounded by terrified workers. When he saw Jara, relief flooded his face. Thank God. They were going to kill us all. We tried to seal it back up, tried to pretend we hadn't found it, but they knew. The company knew. What company? They've been funding the dig, but it was never about expansion. They were looking for this. Looking for proof. Proof of what? Before he could answer, the chamber's main entrance exploded inward in a shower of stone and metal. A full platoon of Orion soldiers poured through, their weapons trained on the civilians, and at their head, wearing the insignia of a corporate executive, walked a Thesson Jara recognized, Lord Kethris, the High Chancellor himself. "Captain Jara," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber with perfect clarity, "how unfortunate that you've involved yourself in matters beyond your comprehension." The Queen was supposed to dismiss this child's ravings. Instead, she sent her most competent officer. A miscalculation on my part. Jara's rifle centered on his thorax. "You're ordering the execution of civilians, Chancellor. That's treason. Treason implies betrayal of one's government. I'm protecting our civilization from a truth that would tear it apart." He gestured to the vault. "Do you know what lies within? The actual history of this world? Proof that my species isn't native to this planet. Proof that we were refugees once, just like the humans we so despise. And worse, proof that we sealed our own benefactors in this tomb 3,000 years ago, when they tried to stop our wars." The revelation hit Jara like a physical blow. The Thessons had built their entire identity on being the indigenous species of this world, on humans being the invaders, the refugees, who should be grateful for sanctuary. If that was a lie, if Thessons were refugees themselves who'd committed genocide against their hosts, it would shatter every foundation of their society. "So you're willing to murder 300 people to keep that secret?" "I'm willing to do whatever's necessary to prevent chaos. The Queen doesn't understand. She's too old, too tied to the past. But I see the future, and it doesn't include revelations that would spark civil war." "The Queen knows," Jara said quietly. "That's why she sent me. That's why she gave me full authorization." Kethris's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Then she's become sentimental in her age." "No matter. My forces outnumber yours 5-1. Surrender your weapons, Captain, and I'll make your deaths quick." Jara's team formed a defensive perimeter around the civilians, weapons raised but clearly outmatched. Her tactical display showed Vox's team pinned down at the entrance, unable to reinforce. The math was simple and brutal. They couldn't win a straight fight, but they didn't need to. "Tommy," she said softly, "remember when I told you to stay in the carrier? Yeah. I need you to do something even more important now. Run back through that maintenance shaft, get to the surface, and find the Queen. No arguments. Your father's life depends on it. Everyone's life depends on it. Run." The boy hesitated only a second before sprinting for the shaft entrance. Kethris's soldiers moved to intercept, but Jara's team opened fire, creating a wall of plasma that forced them back. Tommy disappeared into the darkness, his small form swallowed by shadow. "A child?" Kethris shook his head. "You send a child to save you? How desperate." "Strategic. He'll reach the Queen in 20 minutes. Your forces will be branded traitors. You'll be executed for attempting to overthrow the crown. Your family line will be erased from history. Only if any of you survive to testify." Kethros raised his weapon. "Kill them all." The chamber erupted in violence. Jara's team fought with everything they had, making every shot count, using the vault itself for cover. Civilians screamed and scattered, some caught in crossfire, despite both sides trying to minimize casualties. Tommy's father went down with a graze to his shoulder, Jara dragging him behind a stone outcropping as plasma bolts carved chunks from ancient walls.
"They lasted 3 minutes, then 5.
Then 10, well beyond what should have been possible against superior numbers. But attrition was inevitable, and Jara felt it in the dwindling ammunition counters on her display, in the labored breathing of her team, in the ever-tightening noose of enemy soldiers. "Captain," Vox's voice came through her calm, strained. "We're being overrun. I'm sorry. You've done your duty. It's been an honor." The words felt final, like signing her own death warrant. Jara's rifle ran dry, and she drew her sidearm, knowing it wouldn't be enough, knowing that in seconds Kethris would have his massacre and his silence. Then the entire complex shook like it had been struck by an earthquake. The vault's door began to open. Ancient mechanisms engaged with sounds that resonated in frequencies Jara's ears couldn't quite process. Light spilled from the widening gap, not the cold glare of technology, but something warm, almost organic. And with it came a voice, not spoken aloud, but transmitted directly into her mind, into everyone's mind, human and Thesson alike. "Why do you fight in my tomb?" Every weapon in the chamber lowered involuntarily. Kethris stumbled backward. his exoskeleton going pale. From the vault emerged a figure, tall and slender, its form shifting between states as if it couldn't decide on a single physical configuration. Not Te-san. Not human. Something far older. You, Kethris breathed. You should be dead. We sealed you away. We made sure. Sealed. Yes. Dead. No. We do not die as you understand death. The entity's eyes, when they focused on Kethris, carried the weight of eons. We offered you sanctuary when your world burned. We taught you to build, to prosper. And when you could not stop your wars, when you threatened to destroy this world as you destroyed your own, we tried to help. You rewarded us with imprisonment. You tried to control us, Kethris spat, to make us abandon our nature. As we now offer the same to these, the entity turned to the humans, to Tommy's father and the cowering workers.
You dig in our tombs, seeking knowledge, not realizing the danger.
This vault contains technology that could elevate your species or destroy you. The choice has always been yours. Jara found her voice, though speaking to this being felt like addressing a force of nature. What are you? We shaped this world from barren rock to garden paradise. We welcomed refugees across a dozen species, including the Thessans, including your own ancestors who crashed here 5 centuries before you believe. All the stories you've been told are shadows of deeper truths. That's impossible, Tommy's father said. Humans only arrived 3 generations ago. Your colonists arrived 3 generations ago. But your predecessors came much earlier, in ships that crashed in the northern wastes. We saved them. We gave them technology to survive. And they, like the Thessans, eventually turned on us when we tried to prevent them from repeating their mistakes. The revelation rippled through the chamber. Humans had been here for centuries, hidden from their own people, integrated into Thessan society so thoroughly that the knowledge had been lost. Everything both species believed about themselves was a carefully constructed lie. Kethris raised his weapon with shaking hands. Then we were right to seal you. You're manipulators, controlling evolution, playing God. We are gardeners. We plant. We nurture. We protect. But the choice to grow or wither has always belonged to you. The architect moved with impossible speed, standing before Kethris before he could fire. And now you must choose again. Truth and chaos, or lies and stability. Which serves your people better? The truth would destroy everything we've built. Then you've built on foundations of sand. The architect turned back to Jara. Captain of the guard! You serve the queen. Will she have the courage to face this truth? I don't know, Jara said honestly. But she sent me here knowing what we might find. That has to count for something. The sound of heavy footfalls echoed through the chamber, and Queen Thessera herself entered, flanked by the remainder of the royal guard. She must have been monitoring the entire situation, must have been en route before Tommy even reached the surface. Her ancient eyes took in the scene. The vault, the architect, Kethris standing in the middle of it all with his weapon still raised. So, she said, her voice carrying the weariness of centuries. The tales my grandmother told me were true. You still live, as do you, young queen. Though you are not as young as when last we met. I was barely hatched. Time flows differently for us. To me it feels like yesterday you played in these very halls, before they were sealed, before the wars began. The architect tilted its head. Your ancestors imprisoned us to silence our warnings. Will you perpetuate their sins, or will you have the courage to break the cycle? Thessara approached the vault slowly, each step measured, her escort fanning out in defensive positions. When she stood before the architect, she lowered herself in a gesture of respect Jara had never seen her perform for any being. I am not my ancestors. I will not hide from truth, no matter how painful. Even if it costs you your throne? Even if your people turn on you when they learn their entire history is a fabrication? Especially then, because if I'm not brave enough to face the truth, how can I ask it of them? Kethras's weapon finally discharged, a desperate shot aimed at the queen's back. Jara moved on pure instinct, her body intercepting the bolt, armor absorbing most of the impact but enough force bleeding through to drop her to her knees. The architect made a gesture, and Kethris simply froze, held in stasis by forces beyond Jara's comprehension. You would kill your own queen to preserve a lie, the architect said, almost sadly. This is why we tried to guide you. This is why you sealed us away. Truth is painful. Growth is painful. But the alternative is stagnation and death. Thessera knelt beside Jara, her crystalline claws gentle as they checked the captain's injuries. You took a shot meant for me. That's my job, Your Majesty. Your job is to protect my person. But you've protected something more important today. You've protected truth, justice, and the future. The Queen stood, addressing the assembled crowd of civilians, soldiers, and her own guards. I declare this dig site a royal preserve. Everything found here will be studied openly, published freely. The architect will be our guest, not our prisoner. And yes, this may tear our society apart, but we will rebuild on truth, not lies. Your Majesty, no. One of her advisors pushed forward. The economic chaos alone would devastate us. Civil unrest, religious upheaval, political fragmentation. It would take generations to recover. Then we spend those generations doing better, being better. The Tsar's voice rang with authority that had governed for centuries. I was taught that my species had divine right to this world, that we were chosen, special, superior. Learning that we're refugees like every other species here, that we committed atrocities to maintain our lies, it burns. But I would rather build a civilization on painful truth than comfortable fantasy. The architect's form began to solidify, taking on features that were almost familiar, almost recognizable. There are others like me, sealed in vaults across this world. If you truly mean what you say, release them. Let us help rebuild what was broken. Let us teach again. And if we refuse, then we sleep another 3,000 years and hope the next generation has more wisdom. But I suspect you are different, young queen. I suspect you've grown beyond your ancestors' fears. Thessera turned to Jara, helping her to her feet. Captain, you're injured. Let medical attend to you. I'm fine, Your Majesty. Just bruised pride and armor. You're extraordinary. And when this is over, when the chaos settles and the truth has been told, I'm promoting you to commander of all royal forces. Someone with your integrity should help guide us through what comes next. Jara wanted to protest, but the words died in her throat. Around her, the chamber filled with people processing impossible revelations. Civilians who'd thought they were going to die, soldiers who'd been ordered to kill them, and at the center of it all, a small boy who'd been brave enough to interrupt a royal court because it was the right thing to do. Tommy emerged from behind cover, running to his father and throwing his arms around him. The older man held his son tight, his eyes meeting Jara's over the boy's head with gratitude that needed no words. "What happens now?" Tommy's father asked, still holding his son. "Now," the Queen said, "we tell everyone the truth, we release the archives, we invite the architects to help us understand our real history, and we pray that our people are strong enough to handle it. And if they're not?" Thessera smiled, a terrifying expression on her alien features. "Then we make them strong enough." That's what good leadership does. The architect moved to the vault's entrance, placing one translucent hand against the glowing symbols. "There are records here, technology, knowledge that could advance both your species by centuries. But there are also weapons, mistakes we made, tools we created that should never be used. All of it will be available to you. The choice of what to do with it will be yours. No restrictions." Kathra, still frozen but able to speak, managed to choke out, "You'll just hand over potentially civilization-ending technology and trust us not to destroy ourselves? Because the alternative is to treat you like children who can't be trusted with sharp objects. And we tried that before. It led to war, imprisonment, and 3,000 years of stagnation. Perhaps freedom and responsibility will work better." The vault fully opened, revealing depths that seemed to stretch beyond physical space. Jara's sensors couldn't process what they were showing her, data streams contradicting themselves, measurements that made no sense. Whatever the architects had built, it operated on principles far beyond current understanding. "Your Majesty," Vox's voice came through her calm. "We've secured the perimeter. Orion forces have surrendered. What are your orders?" "Arrest everyone who participated in the attempted massacre. Seize all Orion assets. And get medical down here immediately." Thesser looked at the wounded, both human and Thessan, casualties of a conspiracy that had tried to bury truth under blood. "We have wounded who need care regardless of species." Over the next hours, the excavation site transformed from a tomb into something else. Medical teams arrived, treating injuries without regard to whether the patient had scales or skin. Engineers began documenting the vault's structure. Scientists stood in awe before technology that shouldn't exist. And through it all, the architect watched, ancient and patient. Jara sat against a wall, her armor removed, medical nanites repairing her bruised ribs, while she watched Tommy and his father reunited with his mother, who'd arrived in the third wave of reinforcements. The family held each other tight, and something about the simple humanity of it, the universal nature of love and relief transcending species, made Jara smile. You're pleased, the queen said, settling beside her captain. I'm exhausted, your majesty, but yes, pleased. We did the right thing today. We did the necessary thing. Whether it's right remains to be seen. The Sara flexed her crystalline claws, studying them as if seeing them for the first time. My entire identity was built on being part of the indigenous species. Learning I'm descended from refugees changes how I see myself, how I see everything. Does it change your duty? No, that remains constant. Protect my people even from themselves, especially from themselves. The queen's compound eyes turned to Jara. When this gets out, and it will, there will be riots, possibly revolution. Are you prepared for that? Are you, your majesty? I'm terrified. But I learned something today from an 8-year-old human boy. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the terrifying thing. And you do it anyway because the alternative is worse. The architect approached them, its form more stable now, as if being awake had allowed it to remember how to properly exist in physical space. Queen Thesara, Captain Jara. You should know that releasing this information will have consequences beyond your world. Others will come, drawn by what you found. Some will offer help. Others will see opportunity for exploitation.
Let them come, Thesara said.
We'll face it together, all of us. Dessen and Human and whoever else calls this world home. A bold stance. We shall see if you maintain it when the reality proves difficult. We're refugees, learning to share a world with other refugees, Jara said. Probably we'll make mistakes. Definitely we'll struggle. But we're also capable of interrupting royal courts to save each other's lives. That has to count for something. The architect's laugh was like wind chimes in a storm, beautiful and slightly unsettling. Yes, perhaps it does. Very well. We will help you navigate what comes. We will teach those who wish to learn, and we will hope that this time the species we shelter grow into something greater than war and fear. As dawn broke over the excavation site, news drones began to circle, their cameras capturing images that would circle the planet within hours. The queen stood before them all, Jara at her side, and addressed her people with a truth that would change everything. Citizens of Thessa, she began, her voice broadcast to every screen on the planet. Today you will learn things about our history that will anger you, confuse you, perhaps make you question everything you've been taught. But you will learn them because you deserve truth. We all do. Jara watched Tommy in the crowd, the boy standing with his parents, his courage having sparked a revolution in understanding. In that moment, she understood why the queen had acted so quickly, why she'd risked everything on a child's desperate plea. Because if there was hope for their fractured civilization, it lived in moments like this. And the bravery of the small, the integrity of those who chose right over easy, and the wisdom to know that truth, however painful, was always worth the price. The future remained uncertain, the path ahead treacherous. But as the queen spoke, and the architect stood witness and 300 human workers lived to see another day because a child had been brave, Jara felt something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine hope that they might actually build something better from the ruins of comfortable lies.